Some people only know about 1928's The Man Who Laughs because it was a visual inspiration for DC Comics' Joker, but there's a lot more behind that disturbing grin. The production went through twists and turns which almost had the finished product looking very different, and the movie's influence was felt soon after its release, leading to a visual style that set the standard for some of the Universal monster classics the following decade. This film also wasn't even the first adaptation from the source material. There's a lot to break down, so crack a smile and lend an ear. It's the late 17th century, England. An exiled, rebellious lord named Clancharlie is captured by King James II and his court jester, Barkilphedro, when he returns to the castle to rescue his young son. The king informs Clancharlie that his boy's face was carved into a permanent smile by a Comprachicos surgeon, so he might always laugh at his foolish father. As Clancharlie is executed in an Iron Lady, King James sends out a decree that banishes the Comprachicos from England. Clancharlie's son, named Gwynplaine, is abandoned by his captors when they flee the country. The young boy is left in the middle of a blizzard, soon coming across a frozen-to-death mother and her living baby. Gwynplaine seeks shelter with a traveling philosopher named Ursus. Sympathetic to their situation, the man takes in both the boy and the baby. Years later, the little family travels around with an act called The Laughing Man. Gwynplaine is well known by that name across the country and entertains crowds with his distorted rictus. The baby grew into a beautiful young blind woman named Dea. Ursus writes plays for her and Gwynplaine to star in together. Dea and Gwynplaine are in love, but the young man feels unworthy because of his disfigurement and battles with the shame of showing his face every night. By chance, Dr. Hardquanonne, the Comprachicos surgeon who scarred Gwynplaine, runs into Ursus at a fair and recognizes his star as Clancharlie's son. He sends a letter to the Duchess Josiana, who occupies Clancharlie's estates, in hopes of being paid to keep his silence on the matter. However, the letter is intercepted by the elevated in status Barkilphedro and is shown to the queen instead. She orders the matter taken care of quietly, while her half-sister gallivants at the Southwark Fair and sees one of Gwynplaine's performances. She becomes fascinated by his face, which leads to the star of the show being summoned to the castle. The Man Who Laughs is actually based on a French 1869 Victor Hugo novel originally titled L'Homme qui rit. Oh, that was close.
I am French.
While the movie definitely relies on tragic elements, the book goes even darker, especially toward the end. Hugo came up with the term comprachicos or comprachicos, basically translating to child buyers or boy buyers, to describe the group responsible for Gwynplaine's disfigurement. The word has been used in several other works through the decades. There may or may not be historical significance to an organized group of wanderers who bought children to deform them. Those children would be utilized as freak show performers or beggars to pull in money. Some even sold off as court jesters. In most things I could find online, comprachicos are more described as a part of European folklore and less a specific part of history. Hugo's story was put to screen first in a French 1909 film which has unfortunately been lost, then again in a 1921 Austrian movie, the title translating to The Grinning Face. There have been a few adaptations since The Man Who Laughs, including films, a miniseries, theatrical productions, comic books, and even an opera, but the 1928 film is likely the most well-known of the bunch. A large portion of that is probably due to the Joker deriving part of his appearance from Conrad Veidt's portrayal of Gwynplaine. Bill Finger, Jerry Robinson, and Bob Kane have been credited with Joker's creation over the years, and while the details on who came up with what isn't 100% clear, one constant seems to be that Veidt was the inspiration for the character's signature smile, pale face, and slicked back hair. This picture of Gwynplaine makes that fact undeniable. The homages to the movie have continued into the 21st century. A 2003 Justice League episode called Wild Cards features Joker buying television airtime as Gwynplaine Entertainment. There was also a 2005 Ed Brubaker comic called Batman the Man Who Laughs about the Dark Knight's first encounter with the J-Man, and more recently, a Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo version of the Caped Crusader called The Batman Who Laughs. Hugo wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1831 as well, which Universal adapted into the mega-popular 1923 silent film starring Lon Chaney. Studio head Carl Laemmle eventually wanted to adapt another of Hugo's novels, with Chaney in the lead role, and The Man Who Laughs was settled on. However, deeply involved with MGM at the time, Chaney wasn't interested and was able to change his contract to choose what Universal film he'd star in next. That eventually turned into 1925's Phantom of the Opera. Chaney's co-star in that film, Mary Philbin, was later brought in for the role of Dea in The Man Who Laughs. She even had top billing over Conrad Veidt. Laemmle wanted Universal's next big film to showcase the spectacle the studio was known for producing, so he poured $1 million into his next Hugo adaptation, a very large budget for the time period. Mr. Laemmle was a German immigrant and looked to his home country for a different approach. Paul Lenny was a part of the German Expressionism movement and started working for Universal after his 1924 film Waxworks, which starred Conrad Veidt. The success of 1927's The Cat and the Canary won Lenny the directing job on The Man Who Laughs. Veidt already worked with Lenny and was a fixture of German Expressionism for his role as Caesar in 1920's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. He was a prime choice to play Gwynplaine and his father, Lord Clancharlie. For the lead character's signature makeup, Jack Pierce was brought in. Pierce was a legend in the industry, later responsible for the design of the makeup in Dracula, Frankenstein, The Wolfman, The Mummy, and many more. Gwynplaine's simple but haunting smile was just one example of the iconic looks he helped build. According to the featurette on Kind's DVD release of the movie, Conrad was fitted for a set of oversized dentures. Small hooks were mounted on the sides that pulled his mouth back into Gwynplaine's perpetual expression. It looks fantastic even now and successfully gave off the impression the character's grin was frozen in place. Veidt couldn't speak or move his lips much, so all his acting emanates solely from body language and extremely expressive eyes. You could read the pain, embarrassment, confusion, happiness, and more by a simple glance. Rumor has it, Veidt was in the running to play Dracula for Universal, but left the country for a while in 1929, self-conscious of his German accent as audio broke the silence of motion pictures. We all admire Bela Lugosi's Count, but could you imagine Veidt as Dracula? That would have been amazing to see. And hear. Conrad wasn't the only exceptional performance here. Olga Baklanova provides a steamy and unhinged turn as the Duchess Josiana, Brandon Hurst is creepy and conniving as Barkilphedro, Caesar Gravina had the perfect overly expressive face for silent film as Ursus, Mary Philbin made for a sweet and innocent love interest as Dea, and I'll give Zimbo the German Shepherd some credit as Homo the Wolf. In the book, the name Homo is meant to be an ode to the Latin phrase homo homini lupus, man to man is wolf in English. By 1928, talkies were quickly becoming prominent. Universal considered releasing The Man Who Laughs as a full sound picture, but because Conrad Veidt couldn't speak with his makeup appliance, they decided against it. Instead, they offered the film to sound theaters with a synchronized movie-tone soundtrack. Orchestral music and sound effects were included. There's even a bit of dialogue. The song When Love Comes Stealing was featured in the film, and also a large part of the marketing push. Selling sheet music for movie theme songs was common at the time as sound became standard for the industry. Aroused by and feeling pity for his damaged face, Josiana invites Gwynplaine into her bed and tries to seduce him. In the middle of her temptation, she's given a letter from Queen Anne that reveals the Laughing Man's true identity as the heir to Lord Clancharlie. Josiana's current betrothal is annulled, and she is now to wed Gwynplaine after his legitimacy is restored. Josiana laughs and cries at the situation, chasing off the recent object of her affection. Gwynplaine repledges himself to Dea and lets her feel his carved grin for the first time. This brings them even closer. The next day, the secret heir is taken into custody of the Queen as Ursus and Dea are banished from England. At court, Gwynplaine is made a peer of the House of Lords, but rejects the Queen's decree and flees the castle. With guards chasing him, the Laughing Man attracts the attention of his adoring public, who begin fighting back the Queen's men. Gwynplaine finds out Dea and Ursus have set sail out of the country and desperately looks for them at the docks. Homo, Ursus's wolf, kills Barkilphedro when he tries to stop Gwynplaine from reaching the old man's boat, and the family are all reunited in happiness, leaving England behind forever. The first reviews for The Man Who Laughs weren't anything special. Critics seemed to be lukewarm to it at best, complaining about inauthentic sets and a lost sense of artistry from director Paul Lenny. More modern reevaluations praise it as the classic it is. Not that this matters much for a nearly 100-year-old film, but it does currently have a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes based on 24 reviews. The third act builds with a great crescendo to Gwynplaine finding his family. From how he rejects his lordship to the chase in the village, it's a thrilling finale. I love how our hero dives through the castle window and goes on the run, only to have the people he's entertained defend him. It's a stark contrast to his time at court, with everyone mocking his appearance. For whatever reason, the common people who see the Laughing Man love him. He brings them real joy, and they fight the castle guards in his honor. Gwynplaine scales rooftops, leaps to another building, and hangs on for dear life. He even has a short sword fight, killing one of the Queen's men. The climax is just pure chaos, and it's entertaining as hell. One shot that really caught my eye was the camera falling toward the crowd as Gwynplaine hangs from the window. It's placed perfectly in the editing to show off the danger the main character is in, and creates exciting tension. Art director Charles D. Hall designed the sets, and they really are epic to behold all these years later. The amount of extras they had on hand elevated these scenes to another level as well. The castle dungeon, underlit with fog creeping up out of the floor, is another short but impressive-looking setting. Hall's designs mixed Gothic features with that of Expressionism for a blueprint he'd use again in Dracula, Frankenstein, and more. The Man Who Laughs proved to be the ideal testing ground for how some of Universal's most beloved horror films achieved their signature look. In terms of other standout moments, Barkilphedro's introduction is really unnerving, as is the shot where he pulls back his lips to indicate the disfigurement of Lord Clancharlie's son. Josiana does something similar when describing the Laughing Man. When the younger version of Gwynplaine is shown wandering in the blizzard, we see him walk past hanging corpses blowing in the wind. That whole sequence with the Comprachicos leaving up to our main character finding Ursus is filled with beautiful compositions. There's a shot where the camera meets Josiana walking through the Southwark Fair with drunken men hanging off her. It brought us into the scene in a very engaging way with the blocking and movement. The close-up of Gwynplaine peeking out the curtain during his performance is equal parts unsettling and sad. His whole performance feels that way, actually. Josiana's strange, alluring stare also adds an extra dimension to it. After the show, Gwynplaine tries wiping off his smile like the other performers. Seeing him look in the mirror with that unceasing grin is just heartbreaking and horrifying. The best moment of Veidt's acting, though, comes in the scene at court where he tears up at the Lord's mocking laughter, followed by his big speech. This film has been in the public domain since 2024, so it's easy and free to track down. It gets my stamp of approval as a silent film with sound elements that might be good for a beginner to try watching. If you've seen this one, what are your thoughts? The movie undoes Hugo's more tragic ending and replaces it with a victory for our tortured friend, so it's triumphant, it's creepy, it's sad, but ultimately, it's a love story. And overall, The Laughing Man left a smile on my face. A less intense smile.